Resolutions presented by board members. Okay.
There was I don't want to say revision, but an addition to the policy that I had asked to put on for 30-day public display. Everything would stay the same as far as the shelf life for frozen meats and the cheeses and dry goods. But I did add to the implementation of the shelf life standards set forth above shall commence with any food purchases that takes place after the effective passage of this within policy and shall thereafter comply with the policy. All food products already delivered and received by Gateway School District shall not be affected by this within the policy. Rather, such food will be governed by the policy in effect prior to the passage of this policy. Which, in other words, none of the food that we have right now in-house would be thrown away. It would be used first, except if it would go past the 3-year, which we have a 3-year policy in effect right now. So everything would be used, so we wouldn't be losing hundreds of thousands of dollars that, is out there. But this would make sure that there would be no food wasted.
I second for purpose of discussion.
There was no motion.
Motion by Ms. Warning, second by Ms. Newport. Questions, comments?
This then restarts the 30-day?
No, this
No.
is just you're not changing the substance of the ordinance, you're changing the effective date. Remember, you asked me that. You're changing the effective date of its start time. So I don't think it necessarily starts another 30 days. The substance of the ordinance, or resolution rather, stays the same.
I have a question. If it's true that keeping certain foods beyond 6 months or beyond 1 year always causes our students to become sick, then why wouldn't we begin to get rid of all the food that's older than 6 months or older than 1 year right now? Why would you call out a certain section of the food that's unhealthy and keep it and give that unhealthy food to the students, but the new food that comes in that could be unhealthy, intend to throw that out? Doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Reason why this is being set like this, Mr. Ritter, is from all talking with Mr. Lorenzo. I had him do an inventory to see what was there. I didn't get the exact products were there. I just got like a dollar amount. There's not a lot of food left to be used from what I'm understanding.
So it's just a little bit of food that we would give to the students that would cause them to be sick, right?
They're not going to be sick.
So if they're not going to be sick under the protocol that we're under, then I don't
Well, Mr.
understand
Ritter, what
why we
I'm-
would
I'm
change the
looking
protocol.
is I want our students to have fresh food.
That's
This-
not legitimate, because all the other school board members also want our school children to have good food. So that's not a valid argument.
Well, this is my concern. This is what,
So the inventory is 77,000, correct? That wouldn't be like a little amount. Is that accurate?
But first, do you agree that all the other school board members want the students to have good and healthy, high quality
I
and
would
safe
hope
food?
so.
So the answer is no, but you hope so. Right.
I cannot answer for other board members, Mr.
Okay, so
Ritter.
I ask you not to answer for the board members. I ask you, what do you believe about the school board members? Because you said you want the students to be receiving high quality and safe food. Doesn't that imply that there could be some other school board members who don't want the students to receive high quality, safe food?
Mr. Ritter, I can't answer for other board
Okay,
members.
Okay.
Then I will. I will say that all the school board members want our students to receive high quality and safe food. In order to carry that out, we've elected to create certain policies that rely on the experts who have created protocols and standards by which our food service people can purchase and use food. Those standards and the school service personnel have followed those standards in such an exemplary way that no students have ever gotten sick. But we want to change that. Instead of having no students become sick, we want to change that, right? Isn't that what you want to do?
Continue.
Okay, I'm continuing by asking you to respond to the question. Wouldn't changing a policy that works and works well be an incorrect path for the school board to follow?
We never had a policy with a effective date. We put a 3-year policy into effect.
The policy was It pointed to the standards that are laid out by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the federal department, the FDA, researchers from the National Centers of Health Statistics, the CDC, all the food service organizations, the personnel who are experts, the people who certify, the county organizations who certify people to come in and perform the inspections. But this board is now about to throw out all of those protocols that have worked, and I'm wondering why we would do that.
It's on display for 30 days.
I'm not
Okay.
asking whether it's on display for 30 days. I understand it's on display for 30 days. My question is, why throw out a policy that has worked and worked well
I would
and will
like-
cost money? Because if it's true that we should throw it out, then let's do it. If we do it and it turns out that we were wrong, then shouldn't the board be held accountable? That is, shouldn't the board also pass a resolution to hold ourselves financially accountable for any money that's lost if it turns out that we do something incorrect?
I have a few different questions, and if you don't mind, John,
Let's just let that hang in the air. No one has ever proposed that right before. I hate the idea of proposing that. That is, that the board hold itself accountable for some of the decisions that it creates that causes turmoil for the food service department. So that's what's at stake here, and that's why I'm arguing so passionately, because I talk to professionals too. Talked to one today in a lab coat. I laid out the proposition that we're proposing right here. The person said, essentially, that's ridiculous. They take pride in their work. The food service personnel take pride in their work. They know what to do, and they've been doing it well. It makes no sense to stop following a policy that works.
do we have any data? I know last meeting we had requested data. Do we have any data that?
I requested the data, and Mrs. Warning said she would provide it.
Do we
Would
have
you
any-
like it?
Data from Mr. Lorenzo?
No, the data stating that 1 year is the best option,
1 minute here.
and that 3 years is hurtful to the students.
Well, I don't know if there is exact data out there, but school board members wish to provide fresher food, then that's up to the school board. And speaking with Mr. Lorenzo, I said, why do we have stuff that's 3 years old? And, you know, the system failed. Things didn't get rotated. It admitted that, you know, it comes in, they marked it. You speak to some of the public, a lot of kids don't even eat here because of the food that we serve, and we don't have a choice on some of the things that we serve, and I understand, I've seen some of the food. And I think what Belle's trying to do is trying to get the freshest food she can, and maybe the food service department, I think, understands that, and it'll be an incentive to make sure things get rotated up there. And I think it's a win-win the whole way around.
I agree.
My question is, I mean, because I completely agree. And if you ask any board member, if you ask anyone in the public, right, if you just put it as a simple yes or no, or which one would you prefer?
Right.
Would you prefer a 3-year limit or a 1-year limit? Every single person's going to pick 1 year. If you then ask the exact same people, would you prefer 1 year or 1 week? Everyone's going to pick 1 week.
Right.
And if you ask, you know, do you want farm to table? Everyone's going to pick farm to table. As to whether or not the students like the meal, I can guarantee you every student at that high school would prefer a McDonald's meal over a salad, whether it be from the high school cafeteria, whether it be from Panera. The like, you know, the taste, the things like that, when you're used to eating unhealthy food, which obviously a lot of us do, right? You would obviously prefer that McDonald's meal that you get prior to football practice than any meal served. You know, like the fries are being baked because that's healthier for the students. They're not offered pop, where you go to, you know, McDonald's, you have a 5-year-old getting, you know, medium that's this big of Coca-Cola. Of course they prefer McDonald's. So I think from the standpoint of, are we giving healthy food, we need to look at statistics. We need to look at, okay, is storing that food harmful? Is there deterioration of nutritional value? You know, I've done way too much research on this. It's actually mind-boggling that
Same
we
here.
even had to look at the difference between a freeze, a flash freeze, a deep freeze, so many darn freezes. And, you know, you look at the water crystals on a deep freeze are so small that it doesn't tear up the meat, it doesn't change the taste, it doesn't change the nutritional value, whereas when you slowly freeze something, buy it from Giant Eagle. Someone said, oh, well, why don't we buy stuff from Giant Eagle? When you buy stuff from Giant Eagle, you're buying it, you're taking it from the freezer, you're bringing it over here, it's going to start to thaw a little bit, and then it's going to freeze again. That's actually worse for people. You might think it's fresh because you just got it from Giant Eagle and it was only on the shelf for a week. But that's actually worse than a deep frozen meal from the get-go. So we have no data. Do we have an answer as to what would happen if we lose money, like Martin, Mr. Shaw, and Mr. Short had said would most likely occur?
When I looked at the budget, they're using between 700 to 800,000 in their budget. He's saying it's 15 to 20% commodities is what we're looking at, which comes down to what I believe 0.000, which is roughly.
It's so small.
I can't. I'm not the math.
Hold on. You just said it's 15 to 20%, correct?
15 to 20% of
That's what Mr. Lorenzo said.
$700,000, which is his food budget. The commodities purchase is 15 to 20%.
Okay.
So if you use the high number, it's about $140,000 a year.
But I was just asking a question, so we don't have any answer to that. No, Mr. O'Donnell, I'd like to finish. I've never interrupted you this evening.
Okay.
Val, are we looking to outsource food, or is
No.
that the plan?
I
Okay.
don't know. I would like to want to know where that came from.
I'd love to share with the public. So I have an email here. March 14th, 2017. Chelsea Dice writes, Val and Bill, attached, please find a memo I prepared regarding outsourcing the food service department as per Val's request. Please call me with any questions or comments. Thanks. Chelsea. You responded, thanks, Chelsea. Lots of reading to do. Appreciate it.
Okay. That when you say outsource, Chad, are you referring that we're looking to get rid of all the employees? Outsourcing is not getting rid of the employees. They would come in and direct. Am I
Outsourcing is not getting rid of employees?
correct?
It is not, actually.
Go ahead.
Actually, I've done a lot of research because Val brought this forward. And one of the things I did was I called 2 outsourcing companies because I wanted to know if we set this policy and we went down that road, could somebody like that adhere to our policy? And they said absolutely they could. And I said, well, we can't outsource, because a lot of them, I was just trying to get information, quite honestly, and they wanted to meet me, and I'm like, we're not interested in outsourcing right now. We have contracted employees, and I'm being completely honest and transparent with you. And they said, well, we have programs where we can manage your program and we can retain all of your employees. So I'm sorry that I didn't expect that answer from them, but absolutely, outsourcing does not mean that you're replacing your staff. A lot of times they take over the same contract,
Absolutely.
they take over your employees,
Yep.
same pay scale, same contract.
Completely agree. And-
So let's get that fear tactic. Nobody here is looking to get rid of our employees. We're all going to look at, and I'm even open to looking at all options to give our kids the best quality food that we can and keep our budget in line so that everybody's happy. The budget, the kids, and the families.
Completely agree with you, but I also ask that you reach out to other individuals. So if you talk to any member of the Plum School Board, which I've talked to, and they had outsourced their custodial services. They first came in and said, we'll keep all the employees, we'll keep the contract, we'll keep the same pay, benefits, everything. That was great. 2 years later, the contract expired. Guess what happened? Pay was cut significantly. None of those individuals who lived within that community stayed on board, and it was actually outsourced. So yes, is a company going to come in, and a company as large as an Aramark or whoever it may be, can they undercut and say, oh, we can do it for this cost and we can pay those people that? That's great. But go down to University of Pittsburgh, go down to Duquesne University, go down to any of these places where Aramark is employed and see what they're paying their employees. They're not paying them what we are paying our employees here at Gateway. So yes, it might be good for another year, which is left on their contract, that they can give them, the $15, $16 an hour, which these are individuals that live within the community. But what happens when they say, you know what, we just couldn't make it, profits were down, we're going to have to, the new contract says we can pay you $12 an hour. Do you want to stay, yes or no? Those are the things we need to look at. So when I hear comments like, hey, we haven't looked at outsourcing, but yet we very clearly did look at outsourcing, and we actually paid taxpayer dollars to look into the legality of outsourcing. And in the memo, right, it talks about we have a collective bargaining agreement in place, and we can't just get rid of them, right? Had we reached impasse at negotiations, you would have been able to possibly outsource, and then they would have the opportunity of matching that. But to say that we weren't looking at outsourcing, I mean, it's blatantly a lie. So it's not a fear tactic. the fear that I have is when does it stop? Right? If we do 1 year and we don't have any data, and our business manager says that's a poor business decision, our food director who's in charge of the food program says that's a poor decision, our superintendent says this is not recommended by administration, when does it stop? Right? Because wouldn't you prefer 6 months over 1 year? Wouldn't that be better for the kids? We should maybe make an addendum to this and make it 6 months. Like it actually says, the wording was changed on this one, but it actually said non-perishable items we're throwing out after a year. Non-perishable items. I hope we're reaching out to local food banks because it's non-perishable. We're now making non-perishable items perishable. I don't care who you talk to or what you say, there's no data to back that up. And to throw canned goods that can be in storage for 5 years and are in bunker storage and pastas and things like that, and if you understand purchasing, right, when you buy in bulk, you receive a reduced cost. That's pretty generalization, but pretty accurate, correct, Mr. Schott? Yeah. So we're able to buy these products at a lower price point, which benefits all of our employees because they're able to get paid, they're able to stay on staff, right? We had to actually eliminate one position last year because we were not making the profits, and a lot of that had to do with healthier food options, not selling Diet Pop, not selling the large cookies, etc. But now we're putting another government mandate on them with no backing, no statistical data that says anything is happening, and all this is about is commodities. I would be fine with this if we take out non-perishable items and we take out commodities purchases, because that's really what this is about.
Can I comment? Chair, are you done, Chair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It was my understanding that the reason this is being presented, this motion is being presented, is because several board members felt strongly that throwing out the food that was currently in our possession wouldn't be the best thing to do financially. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, Val, but this addendum was drafted to assuage those concerns. So we'll use up the commodities that we have now, and when they're exhausted, then they'll follow the policy of the board. Isn't that basically all this is about?
That's basically all it is.
Okay, that's just all that this was drawn for, all right?
And I disagree with it
Okay.
and all of it because the U.S. Department of Agriculture has created protocols for all types of foods, and we should follow their recommendation, not our board resolution with the addendum here.
Okay,
That's my contention.
sure.
Any other questions or comments? Can we
So
have a
let me
roll-
ask George. You were on the phone last time we talked about this, and we were having trouble hearing you. Do you remember that?
About what we talking about here, the food?
Yeah, about the food. And we were wondering what your objection to this was, and you weighed in. You mentioned that you had walked through the meat lockers and you saw some cheese and meats that didn't look right, and you didn't want to serve any bad foods to the students. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And were those, have any foods that were unsafe ever been served to our students here, to your knowledge?
Not in my knowledge.
Right, not to mine either. And foods do go bad. Of course they get mold, they get old, they smell funny, and the food service people never serve them to the students. I like that, so why would we change that? Why do you want to change that?
Only thing that disturbed me with my walkthrough was the food that was 4 or 5 years old, and then we had present food there too. I was wondering why we weren't using the old food before the new food.
I like your thinking there, because it should have been rotated and it wasn't, and somebody slipped up and it was caught and dealt with, right? That's good. But why change the policy? The policy was violated, and then it was, the food was discarded. The policy wasn't wrong, the operation was wrong, right?
Yeah, the operation with all the
Right, and so when
blue
somebody...
cheese and everything, yeah.
Right, when somebody messes up, you need to get that. It's a black mark against you. And that's okay. People make mistakes, don't they? Everybody, every teacher, every person, every board member, we make mistakes. We shouldn't change the
I just-
underlying protocol because of that. We should deal with it and move on, right?
Yeah.
I just want to read something that I had received. The inventory reporting requirements from the US FDA. It's consistent with inventories not to exceed a 6-month supply of any USDA foods without approval. State agencies administering are required to use, there's certain forms that they have, inventory management, register, to report any food items in state and state contracted warehouses that exceed 6 months of inventory. They're talking about foods that are donated, which commodities, I don't want to say are donated, but we get them at a very low cost, which should not exceed 6 months of the inventory. I could print this out, I had it. I don't know where I left it, but I can print that out and give it to you.
Any other questions or comments?
From who?
The USFDA. United States Department.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
We are not voting.
This isn't a vote, this is just a resolution.
Yeah, it was a motion and second.
Has it been on display for 30 days
It's
since
the
2
ad.
weeks ago?
No.
No, it's
This
to
is
change
change.
Oh, I see.
the 30 day. Yeah.
I see, okay,
No,
thank you.
it's-
To add
It's
number
the
4.
ad.
Yeah, to change the 30 days.
Right, the language of, to add number 4.
Correct.
Yeah, that's all this is to change the language.
And I guess actually before we go to roll call, I just want to explain my vote because I know during roll call is one time. I'm actually going to vote for this because I believe this is actually less asinine than the first one because we're now at least keeping the food that is healthy still and serving it. So I'm not for the 1-year policy. Just wanted to explain that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Stubenbort,
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich. Mr. Enola.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I have another resolution, if that's okay.
Excuse me, before we go on, you can see that we've invested a lot of time in this discussion. I'm discussed out of this. It's on 30-day notice. If the public could weigh in, please, that would help the board, because we know what we think. We've said it out loud a couple times. We've discussed it the way we should, out in the open, a good, hearty discussion. But we need the public to weigh in. This is a 30-day public display, so let's have the public weigh in. So what you do is you get your email, you get your telephone, you call us up, you let us know what you think. That will help us, okay? Thanks.